Feel free to be whoever you want to be. Feel free to dance, feel free to sing, just feel free.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Two Tone Talk Pod. The Two Tone Talk by God Pod. Right here live on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. Hey, everybody, if you haven't subscribed to the Two Tone Talk YouTube, you need to do it because I'm 2 subs away from 700. So go do it. Go put me over the 700. What did I say? I'm 2 away from 700. Yeah. That's what I don't know. I've had a headache all day. I don't know if I said the right thing. I am 2 subs away from 700. Good Lord, I can't even think. Okay. We knew, right here on episode 85, we knew it would be an eventful offseason. We knew with the cap room, we knew with a high draft pick, we knew this would be a very eventful offseason. And here we are. It has been a very eventful free agency period over the last few weeks. And boy, oh boy, have the Titans made some moves. Lloyd Cushenberry, Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, Chido Awuzie, Kenneth Murray, and re-signing some guys like Nick Westbrook-Akine and Jack Gibbons as well. But a few nights ago, we got one of the biggest moves of the offseason so far when the Titans made the trade for Legarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs. And this was something that had been rumored for all throughout since free agency started. And much like the Calvin Ridley deal, it kind of felt like the Titans, people just kind of stopped talking about the Titans and Legarius Sneed. The Colts were talked about for a little bit, but I think most people were of the belief that he was going to go back to Kansas City and play on the franchise tag. But shockingly enough, much like Calvin Ridley, everybody thought the Titans were out on Calvin Ridley as well. They came out of nowhere. Well, the Titans stayed true to Legarius Sneed all along, and they pulled it off at the end of the day. Compensation-wise, the Titans gave up a 2025 third-round pick and a pick swap in the 7th round this year. And I know there are a lot of fans of other teams that look at that compensation and say, why in the world would our team not trade a 2025? Like, in terms of compensation alone, people will look at what the Titans gave up and be like, that's nothing. I think the holdup for everybody with the Legarius Sneed deal was money, and the money that he wanted. It was rumored that he wanted $22 million a year. The Titans got him for $19 million a year. We knew, there are advantages, okay? There are advantages to having money. There's advantages to having cap space. And every offseason we see it. Somebody's got a lot of money, somebody doesn't have a lot of money. I said this the other day, the first example I can think about the Saints. The Saints don't have a lot of cap room at all this offseason. And so that's why they've been relatively quiet. Because there's not a lot they can do. Denver, same way. Tennessee, this offseason was in a position where they had a lot of money to spend, and they were willing to make that move that not a lot of teams could make right now. And so Legarius Sneed joins Chido Awuzie and Roger McCreary, and that's a pretty darn good secondary right there. Legarius Sneed is, in my opinion, one of the best corners in the league, and I think he has proven that over time. You look at his track record and the way that he played this past season, lined up against some of the best wide receivers that this league has to offer. I'm talking Justin Jefferson, I'm talking Tyreek Hill, I'm talking Deebo Samuel, I'm talking Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm talking A.J. Brown. He lined up against all those guys. He lined up against Calvin Ridley this season and did well against all of them. And so this is a very exciting pickup for a Tennessee Titans secondary that, last season we talked about, the offensive line. We talked about that a lot, how the offensive line was not very good. We talked about, how there were a lot of the wide receiver room needed to be better. But the secondary was also a liability at times. I mean, God bless them. The secondary for Tennessee last year was just left a lot to be desired. And so to get Cheeto Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed, partner them up with Roger McCreary, who's a good slot corner. That's a dangerous secondary, not to mention you've got Amani Hooker back there at safety. I think the Titans still need to make another move at safety, maybe get another veteran back there with Amani. But the secondary is looking much, 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 much improved, and that's good news for the Tennessee Titans. That was one of those areas of the team that drastically needed to improve, and so far it has. Needs depth, of course. You need some depth pieces, in case of injury, in case of, just needing to be subbed in and out. But for those three right there, Awuzie, L'Jarius Sneed, and Roger McCreary, I think there's a lot to be excited about in the secondary. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball since we're talking about the secondary. But Sebastian Joseph Day was a pickup the Titans made, defensive tackle. We knew with Danico Autry leaving and going to Houston that left kind of a spot on that defensive line. And Sebastian Joseph Day is a guy that I think there's a lot of upside. I mean, you look at what he was able to do in LA, which is where he's played his best NFL football of his career alongside Aaron Donald, right? So when he's lined up by a stud, like a Jeffrey Simmons, say, that opens the door for him to make plays. And let's be honest, I mean, that's kind of been a benefit for Danico Autry all these years. I'm not taking away, people are going to think I'm taking away from what Danico Autry's done with the Titans just because he's with the Texans now. But no, I mean, when you're lined up beside a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, that definitely helps because he's drawing double teams, at least double teams all the time. So I like the position that Sebastian Joseph Day is going to be in. I don't know if he's an every down guy. I think there's got to be some depth brought to that defensive line. Could that happen in the draft? That's something we'll talk about in a little bit. Inside linebacker is probably the position of greatest need on the defense. Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons, if the season started today, are probably your two starting inside linebackers, but thankfully the season does not start today, and there are some things that can happen down the line. Obviously, Otis Reese was a guy who got some playing time late in the season for Tennessee last year when, a lot of guys were on IR. The Titans were out of the playoff hunt, so they were just kind of fielding a team every week. And Otis Reese was kind of one of those guys who really played well for Tennessee at inside linebacker. I know there's a lot of fans who are intrigued by what Otis Reese could bring to the table at inside linebacker, and consider me one of those. I'm one of those too, but I also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident this is not a very deep draft when it comes to inside linebacker. I mean, there's some guys there that are interesting, but I mean, especially when you start getting into later rounds, you never know, but all intents and purposes would lead you to believe it's not the deepest draft in the world when it comes to linebackers. So you start looking to free agency and what guys can be brought in. I think, you hope that a guy like Kenneth Murray, who they brought in from the Chargers, who is very young, you hope that he can come in and improve under a new regime, under a new system, under a new coaching staff, that maybe Kenneth Murray can figure it out in a way that he wasn't able to with the Chargers. But my guess would be you are going to see over the summer some veteran signings for the inside linebacker position. The Titans seem very dedicated to stopping the pass. I think they've proven through the moves they've made with Awuzie and Sneed that that's their top priority, is being able to throw the ball and being able to stop other teams from throwing the ball. Imagine that in 2024, whereas for the last however many years, the Titans have been obsessed seemingly with stopping the run, which is a great thing to be able to do, but it's very much a passing league, and just kind of a weird flex to be obsessed with stopping the run the way that we have been. But ultimately, I think you're going to get your answers at linebacker through free agency, and maybe with defensive tackle, you can find someone in the draft. Offensively, offensive line remains a concern. Obviously, you bring in Lloyd Cushenberry, and, that's a huge improvement at center. I think God bless Aaron Brewer, as he's now a Dolphin. But I think Lloyd Cushenberry, you feel good about that. You've got Skoronski back. Interesting comments that were made by Brian Callahan. You know, they're doing some media stuff today. And he made some comments about the offensive line that I think might intrigue you if you haven't seen that interview. And you never know how much of this is just coach speak and not wanting to let on to what moves you might be planning to make in the draft so that other teams don't. Obviously, that's a part of it. But he talked about how he thought there was a lot of upside with guys like Jalen Duncan and Nicholas Petit-Frere. He mentioned those two guys in particular as guys that he saw as guys with a lot of potential. Now, don't freak out and think that I'm telling you that Brian Callahan was like, we're going to start Jalen Duncan. No, he just said that, you know, honestly, I think they put a lot of stock into Bill Callahan coming in. I think they put a lot of stock in Bill Callahan's ability to help guys develop and become better and better and better. And so I think they see a guy with the size of Jalen Duncan or, you know, Nicholas Petit-Frere, who had a whole season starting right tackle last year before coming in. And he wasn't like the best right tackle in the world, but he has a little bit of experience now. So I think they might be hoping that they can figure something out with one of those guys somewhere on the line. Interesting to note, in terms of tackles, Dylan Radins was not mentioned, but there was mention that Dylan Radins was more so seen as a guard than a tackle, which backs up what I've been saying, which is that I would not mind giving Dylan Radins a shot at right guard, assuming you're going to keep Skoronski at left guard, you're going to have Cushenberry at center, probably drafting a left tackle in round 1. Who knows about right tackle, but in terms of right guard, I'm willing to give Dylan Radins a shot because he's shown signs. I just think he's a better guard than tackle. He's a better inside guy than outside guy. And I think that with Bill Callahan coaching and with that opportunity to develop, I think you'd be surprised. Unless we forget, I've said this before, the Titans owe it to themselves to try to make it work with Dylan Radins. He was a second-round pick in 2021. The Titans have not hit on a lot of early round picks over the last few drafts. I mean, let's be honest. Treylon Burks has been, that's very up in the air. Caleb Farley is more than up in the air. Isaiah Wilson was a disaster. And then you start even looking at second-round picks. Even the second-round picks have not looked great. Christian Fulton is not on the team anymore. The McCreary, obviously there's some upside there, and you hope that continues to get better. But the Titans need to try to get something out of Dylan Radins. You spent, maybe not you, maybe it was John Robinson that did it, but still the organization spent a second-round pick on this guy. I'd be interested in trying him out at right guard. You have to wonder, with Brian Callahan specifically mentioning Jalen Duncan and Nicholas Petit-Frere as guys that intrigued him, got to wonder where they see them landing. Obviously, Sadiq Charles was a free agent signing they made who has some experience, and he could find a spot somewhere on the offensive line as well. I'm looking at the right side because I'm just envisioning a left tackle being drafted. So I'm looking at the right side of this line. I still, and there are still some intriguing names out there in free agency. Mekhi Becton is a name. David Bakhtiari, it's a hard name to say. These are names that are out there that you could get. So they're risky at this point in free agency. Yeah, those are risky names in terms of injury and age and durability and all of that. But there are still some key names that they could sign to come in and take that other tackle position. But obviously, I feel like there is at least going to be one starter on that offensive line that is already on the roster right now. I'm talking to Dylan Radins. I'm talking to Nicholas Petit-Frere. I think there's going to be at least one, if not two, because I'm telling you, I'm gathering by what I've heard from Brian Callahan, they put a lot of stock into Bill Callahan's ability to come in here and develop some of these guys. Maybe guys that we've written off. there may be some of you who have written off Dylan Radins or Nicholas Petit-Frere or Jalen Duncan or any of those guys. But I think with Bill Callahan, they're viewing it as this is a new day. And this is a guy who's going to be able to come in here and coach these guys up and develop them. And time will tell if they're right. But I think there is a possibility that they might look to that right side of the line and look at guys they already have. And I'd love to know you guys' thoughts on that. Calvin Ridley, obviously, we talked about that. Calvin Ridley signing with the Titans, a wide receiver room, much like the secondary, is a room that is much improved, with Hopkins, who did some media and press today as well, said he's very excited about the future. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Nick Westbrook-Ikine is back. Treylon Burks, there are rumors of trades and what they could get for him. We'll see how that plays out. Kyle Phillips, who knows? But the belief among most is that the Titans need to go wide receiver with one of their first two picks. Most people think the second round. And that may be true. I just wonder, with the defense shaking out like it has, the secondary improving the way it has, you just have to wonder, is there a chance of doing something with that second round pick, like going with a defensive tackle or something like that? You got to wonder if that's a possibility, because we're all just assuming that one of the top two picks is going to go to a tackle, offensive tackle. One of those is going to go to a wide receiver, and that's probably the safest bet. But I just got to wonder, with Danico Autry leaving, you want, some guys that can go in there alongside Jeffrey Simmons. I just wonder if that thought crosses their mind, like Sweat from Texas, this defensive lineman that a lot of people are high on, that, is projected to go around pick 38, which is the Titans' second round pick. I just wonder if they would be intrigued by the idea of going defensive tackle in the second round. I still think wide receiver is the way to go, because even though I'm excited about Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins, you're looking at a couple of years with these guys, and then, they're 30, and I think Hopkins will be 31 maybe by the time the season starts. So you need to at least think about some speed. These guys are elite route runners, very quick, but you got to think about getting some speed in there. Makes me think of a guy like Adonai Mitchell, but I don't think he's going to make it to pick 38 in the second round. I think after his showing at the combine, I think he's going to be a late first round pick. But we all know how deep this wide receiver class is. And it's one of the deepest wide receiver classes, like, all time. And so there's going to be great options there in the second round. Unless we forget, even if you start getting into fourth, I know we don't have a third round pick right now, but as you get into the fourth and fifth round, lest we forget, Amon-Ra St. Brown was a fourth round pick, and he's been tearing it up in Detroit. Lest we forget, we took Des Fitzpatrick when we could have, and I can't even get into that. But anyway, did I mention the old GM's been fired? But I definitely think that's the safest bet. When I look at this first round and the way it's going to shake out, I've been thinking about this for days. The discussion has changed regarding the picks in front of Tennessee. I got to roll my sleeves up for this. I love talking draft. So we know those first three picks, the Bears, the Commanders, the Patriots, sure looks like those are going to be quarterbacks. I mean, Chicago for sure. They got rid of Justin Fields. That's pretty much a lock that Caleb Williams is headed to Chicago. Washington is certainly going quarterback. It's just a matter of which one. Do they go Jaden Daniels? Do they go Drake May? Either way, they're going quarterback. The Patriots, I think at this point, I mean, maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know how high the Patriots are on Drake May. I think that obviously you're at pick 3, so you're in position to get your guy, but I just wonder, because they signed Jacoby Brissett. I just wonder if there's a chance, because you're hearing all these rumors that the Patriots are not as high on some of these quarterbacks. And so it makes you wonder, could they put a placeholder guy in there for a year like Brissett and then take Marvin Harrison? I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Patriots, and now J.J. McCarthy has entered the conversation too. But I definitely think those top 3 picks will be quarterbacks. The interesting thing is Minnesota, because they're way back there at like what 11, 12, I think they are, maybe 12 in the draft. They're wanting to trade up, and the rumors are that they're being aggressive in trying to get up there and get a quarterback, namely J.J. McCarthy, assuming that May and Daniels and Caleb Williams are all gone in the top 3. They're trying to trade up there and get a quarterback, and they're really feeling like they got to get into the top 5 because the Giants are sitting there at 6, and a lot of people think they could go J.J. McCarthy, which is interesting because, I mean, I don't blame them. The Daniel Jones experiment is kind of not going well for them, but, I mean, wow, that would be something. If the Giants were to take a quarterback, I think they're the most likely option to do it in the top 10 after New England, but or after that 3rd pick, I mean. So if they want to trade and get up in front of the Giants, that means they want to get into the top 5. Okay, we know those top 3 teams probably ain't trading out because they're going with the quarterback themselves. Then you got Arizona at 4. So if you try to trade with Arizona, maybe you guys disagree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube chat. I think it would be stupid for Arizona to trade. Like, I don't even know. Because if you're Arizona, you're sitting there at number 4, you're pretty much guaranteed Marvin Harrison. You're guaranteed Marvin Harrison because these first 3 teams are probably all going quarterback. You're guaranteed a generational wide receiver. You guys decided to bring back Kyler Murray, and you need to. I mean, there's a lot of potential with Kyler Murray. He's a tremendous athlete. You need to bring in guys to help Kyler Murray. And the Arizona Cardinals ain't got much of nothing going for them in the way of weapons and wide receivers and things like that. So, especially like you said in the chat, B Ravens won. They lost Rondell Moore. They lost Hollywood Brown. So they're in a bad way. I just can't bring myself to believe that Arizona is going to trade back and give up Marvin Harrison. Like, if I were Kyler Murray and they did that, I would personally be offended. If you were sitting there with the opportunity to take a generational wide receiver, and unless Minnesota's willing to give you Justin Jefferson, unless Minnesota says, we will give you, but how stupid would Minnesota be to do that? Another generational wide receiver that you're going to give up to go trade up and get J.J. McCarthy? How good do you think the kid's going to be? So I don't think Arizona's trading out. I just think that would be stupid to trade out. Then you get to the Chargers at 5. And I feel like they're in the same position. The Chargers, I was worried about them going after Joe Alt because they need protection on their offensive line. Justin Herbert got hurt last year. You need to keep him upright. Sure. But they got rid of Keenan Allen. They got rid of Mike Williams. So now, in this scenario, you're sitting there with a chance to get Malik Neighbors, who I think in any other draft nearly would be wide receiver 1. The only reason he's not in this draft is just because Marvin Harrison is such a freak. But, okay, another potentially generational talent that you can get at number 5. You have no really good wide receivers for your elite, potentially elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. Why would you trade back if you're the Chargers? I just don't get why you would trade out of that. Unless they're going to give you Justin Jefferson, which, again, I've already established would be an idiotic thing for Minnesota to do. So I just think the Chargers, and yeah, they could go Joe Alt, but, I mean, the wide receiver market in terms of free agents has really mellowed out. I'll leave it at that. Now, there are always guys like T. Higgins, Chargers, or somebody like that can make the trade. There are guys like Brandon Ayuk who have been rumored. I've even seen rumors that Stephon Diggs ain't happy in Buffalo, but I mean, that's all the time. Stephon Diggs is never happy. So, I mean, yeah, between now and the draft, you could always have, some crazy trade that goes down that kind of changes things. But as things stand right now, I think that both the Cardinals and the Chargers would be crazy to trade out of where they are at 4 and 5 because you're guaranteed Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors. Then you get to the Giants, who could go quarterback. the Giants could do a lot of things. The Giants, they need a lot. Okay, so the Giants could take Joe Alt. Sure. Their offensive line sucks too. They could take Alt. They could take Rome Odunze, because that's another, he's kind of worked his way into the conversation as well. Kind of feel like it's that big three wide receivers, of Marvin, Neighbors, and Odunze. That's the big three for that top 10. And the Giants could do that. The Giants could just look and say, hey, Rome Odunze's right there. We need a wide receiver one. Let's get him. Sure, they could do that. They could take Joe Alt. I think right now the Giants are the most likely option. If anybody's going to get Joe Alt ahead of Tennessee right now, I think the Giants are the most likely to do it. I would have said the Chargers until they got rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but they get rid of their two wide receivers there. Then it's like, well, they have to get somebody. They are in need of wide receivers desperately, and they're in position to get a potentially elite one. So I just don't know why they would pass it up. So I think if anybody is going to get Joe Alt ahead of the Titans, it would be the Giants. But here's the problem. What do the Giants need? They need wide receivers too. And Odunze in this scenario is still there. And then there's Brock Bowers. People talk about Brock Bowers. I'll just say I would flat out be surprised to see any team ahead of Tennessee draft Brock Bowers. I'd be very surprised. But I've been surprised before. So then we get to the Titans. I think the safest bet right now is Joe Alt. But if for whatever reason Joe Alt is not there when you're on the clock, if Giants take him or some crazy scenario, the Chargers take him, I don't know if there's another tackle that you would need to take at 7, because the nearest tackle is Fashanu. I've heard people talk about Latham from Alabama, but my thing is, I really think if you're at 7 and Joe Alt's not there, yeah, you can take the next best tackle at 7 and be done with it, sure. And I'm not necessarily going to complain about that. But to me, that's when trading back comes into the conversation a little bit. If Joe Alt's not there when you're on the clock, that's when I would be willing to listen to Minnesota, or somebody like that's calling with an offer. Just, because I think you could trade back a few spots and still get that tackle. I could be wrong. You never know. The Bears are at 9. They've got a bad offensive line too, so they could go O-line when they're back up at pick 9. But I think the Titans, I feel like in my heart of hearts, what's going to happen in front of them, you're going to have the 3 quarterbacks go, Caleb, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. I think Arizona's going to go Marvin. I think the Chargers are going to go Neighbors. I honestly believe that the Giants will either take J.J. McCarthy or they will take Rome Odunze. And I think the Titans will get Joe Alt. I really think that that's where it's leading. But if for whatever reason Joe Alt's not there, that's when it becomes like what do you do? What do you do? Do you trade back, take a tackle? Do you stay there, just take the next best tackle? Or do you go ahead and take a wide receiver? Because if somebody in front of you took Joe Alt, that means that one of those big 3 receivers is still there. Brian Callahan's made it clear. He wants to build up, get weapons, and get guys that could score. So, I think if they have the option at one of those big-time wide receivers, they may very well take it. Because Brian Callahan, lest we forget, he was in Cincinnati when they had an awful offensive line, had a chance to take Penei Sewell, and chose to take Jamar Chase instead. So, he's been there, done that, and he's got a history. So, I'm not totally ruling out that the Titans could go wide receiver with pick 7. I just feel like it's going to end up being Joe Alt, and it might feel anticlimactic to people when that happens, because we've talked about it so much. But I feel like Joe Alt is the move to make. And then, I'm down if in that scenario, Joe Alt left tackle, Skoronski left guard, Cushenberry center, try out somebody that's already on the roster. Um, Dylan Radins or Petit Frere, somebody at right guard. And then right tackle, I think there's still, I'm down to go get a Mekhi Becton or somebody like that for right tackle, a veteran that you can put in there and, mold some of these younger guys that Brian Callahan's encouraged about while you've got that veteran in there. And then with pick 38, I'm still wondering if they might try to go D-tackle just because of how things have shaken out on defense. But we know there's still going to be some great names there at number 38, second round, that they could take at wide receiver. Lastly, today I want to talk about this. Oh, here we go with a rant. I saw Bruce here, who's a Colts fan. You have to forgive me, Bruce. A lot of people thought L'Jarius Sneed was going to go to Indianapolis. They ended up going to Tennessee. And I know how free agency works among fans. Whether or not a player is good or washed or overpaid, it all depends on whether or not he signs with your favorite team or not. I know. There are guys that fans want, and then they sign somewhere else, and it's like, oh, we didn't want them anyway. They suck. Everybody does that. But a lot of Colts fans on Twitter have just been brutal over these last however many hours since L'Jarius Sneed signed with the Titans. And I'm baffled because I keep seeing Colts fans, but other media people and other fans of other teams too that are like, well, L'Jarius Sneed, he's just got injury problems. He's just got this history of injuries, and he's probably not going to be very durable. And I just don't know where that's coming from, because you can go look. In 2021, out of a possible 20 games, because the Chiefs, of course, they make the playoffs every year. That's who he was playing for. Out of 20 possible games, L'Jarius Sneed played in 18 of them in 2021. He missed 2 games 2021 season. The next season, the 2022 season, out of a possible 20 games, L'Jarius Sneed played in all 20 games. Didn't miss a game. And then in 2023, the most recent season, out of a possible 21 games, he played in 20 of them. So in 3 years, L'Jarius Sneed has missed 3 games. He is averaging missing 1 game a year. And yet, that's too much to pay for somebody with injuries. He's never going to be in the game. Especially coming from Colts fans, don't you think? Like, don't you guys have your own injuries to worry about? Like, and I don't want to make light of injuries. I would never do that. But, like, y'all thought Jonathan Taylor was the second coming of, Barry Sanders and, Jim Brown and all of them rolled into one. I mean, how many games has he missed? How much time has he missed due to injury? And then you want to talk to me about injuries. And look, I like Anthony Richardson. Listen, I try to come on here. Here we go. Let me get a swig of water for this. Here we go. Ding, ding, ding. I don't have anything against Anthony Richardson. I understand he's a talented kid. He is. But if I have to see one more time about how, like, clearly he's better than Will Levis. Oh, clearly this guy is better. I mean, Will Levis, and it's not just Colts fans, to be honest with you. It's like, whenever people talk about the AFC South, they're like, oh man, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, which that's a whole nother Trevor Lawrence is a whole nother topic in and of itself. We can talk about Trevor. That's a whole other podcast. But then they're like, I mean, Anthony Richardson. Like, we're just throwing him out there like he's a proven commodity. It's like, oh, Titans better stack up that secondary if they're going to stop Anthony Richardson. Anthony, what? I try to come on here and be unbiased. I'm obviously a Titans fan. I'm a diehard. But I don't ever want to just come on here and throw out a bunch of clickbait that's just going to get everybody. Like, I try to come on here and be level-headed. Sometimes if the Titans come out and get a big win or something, I'll get carried away. But overall, I try to be realistic, and I try not to just come on here and be a homer. And so I don't think it is homer behavior. I don't think it is unreasonable for me to say that Will Levis showed a lot of promise his rookie season. He did a lot of good things. And I'm optimistic about his future with the Titans. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think that makes me a homer. I don't think that makes me, crazy. I think that's a very reasonable take. Did some good things, showed a lot of promise. I'm optimistic about what he can do in the future. Done and done. I'm not here saying he's the next Tom Brady, because playing football is not easy. Making it in the NFL is not easy. So I'm not here to say we got the next Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, but I'm encouraged. I think his debut against Atlanta, I thought obviously that was sensational. I think he went on the road 4 days later on a short week against a good Steelers defense and put on a good performance against them. I feel like the game against Miami on the Monday night comeback game, I thought he was great. I thought he did some good stuff against Indianapolis and Houston in the 2 home games we played against them. Thought there was a lot of good stuff there against Carolina. I thought he did a lot of good stuff. There's some throws that he probably wishes he could have back. Well, duh. Were there some interceptions, some bad throws? Sure. But overall, I think considering that he was playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league, if not, bottom 3 offensive line in the league, considering he had one good wide receiver that was doing anything, and unbelievably painfully conservative play calling, yeah, I was encouraged by Will Levis. I liked most of what I saw from him. Didn't like everything. There were some obvious things that wish that we could have back, but I don't think it makes me unreasonable or a homer to say, hey, thought he showed a lot of promise. I'm encouraged about, where the direction of the team with Brian Callahan, his history of quarterbacks. I don't think that's unreasonable. But what I can't believe, another swig of water real quick, is that any Colts fan would dare sit here and act like Anthony Richardson has shown you anything that Will Levis hasn't. You lose all credibility with me if you are a Colts fan and you're like, well, the Titans have a major question mark at quarterback. I don't know how they can feel good about Will Levis. How can you feel good about Anthony Richardson? He's played in 2 full games. 2! I'm not making that up. He's played in 4 games total, but one of them he got hurt early on, and so pretty much missed 3/4 of the game. And in the other one, he got hurt in that one too. So he's played in 2 full games. Now, I'm not saying the kid's bad. I'm not saying that he's not going to do some good stuff for them. But to just sit around here and act like, oh, Anthony Richardson, clearly he's going to be awesome. What are you basing that off of? What are you basing that? Like, they're like, well, he's had as many touchdowns in 2 games as Will Levis had. Okay, did he have Derrick Henry? Because there were whenever the Titans got inside the 5, they were giving the ball to Derrick Henry. That's the first thing. But also, it's like, hey, go look at Anthony Richardson's touchdowns that he scored. One of them's a screen where I think Michael Pittman took it like 60-something yards. 2 of them are like 1-yard quarterback draws. So, like, yeah, he scored 8 touchdowns, but I mean, it's not like he was just throwing bombs all over the place. He threw some nice passes, but for every highlight you give me of him, I can give you one of Will Levis too. Like, do you understand? Like, it's not that I think Anthony Richardson's bad or going to be bad, but like to sit here and act like he's a proven commodity and Will Levis isn't, give me a break, dude. And all of the L'Jarius Sneed injury stuff that you're trying to come up with to justify why you didn't get him, like, how, like, please cry a little more. Just cry a little bit more. Like, it's just baffling to me to be like, oh, I don't know how the Titans feel good about Levis. We've got Anthony Richardson. It's like, oh, okay. His highlight film is like 30 seconds long because there's so few highlights to show because he's barely played. You want to talk to me about injury history with L'Jarius Sneed? He's missed 3 games in 3 years. Your quarterback has played in 3 games in 1. In 1 year. You want to talk to me about injuries? Just baffling. Just not. It's not rooted in reality. It's not rooted in any sense of reality. You know? And then I got to deal with, and this isn't necessarily Colts fans, but then I got to deal with all these people who are just stunned that the Titans have made all these moves. I can't even believe that this is an actual thing that people said. Why are the Titans doing all this? They're in a rebuild. Why are they building around Will Levis? They don't even know if he's the guy. Okay, so what you're saying we should do is get crappy offensive line, crappy receivers, crappy running backs, crappy defense, and throw Will Levis out there and say, show us if you're the guy. Yeah, that's good. That'll sure set him up for success. Like, are you kidding me? The people say, like, why are the Titans making all these moves to build around Will Levis? I don't know. Because now, if Will Levis comes out and he ain't that guy, at least you can go out and get another guy and you've already got pieces around him. But you got to put the kid in a position to succeed. Like, I don't understand. Why does... I like Bryce Young. I really do. But why does Bryce Young get the benefit of the doubt? Why does Bryce Young get all these excuses? With Bryce Young, it's like, oh, well, he didn't have a good offensive line. He didn't have good receivers. There's bad coaching, growing pains. But then with Will Levis, it's like, bro, why couldn't you make it work with Nick Westbrook-Akine? Like, why couldn't you make it work with Andre Dillard blocking for you on your blind side? Like, why couldn't you make it work with the worst offensive line and most painfully conservative play calling in the history of mankind? Why couldn't you make it work, Will? It's like you give somebody a pile of dookie poo and be like, hey, why doesn't this taste like a filet mignon? It's like, well, because it's dookie poo. Like, you can't throw somebody out there with garbage around them and then be like, show us what you got, kid. Get him some help. And if he's still dookie poo, then, okay, time to move on. But let's find out what you have. And I don't see how you can accurately find out what you have unless you have great players around him. Good protection, good receivers, good defense. Lord have mercy. They're going to get me upset. And you know what? I hope Will Levis is that guy. I really do. But, like, he's earned the right to get a shot. He's earned the right to get a shot. And he's going to get a shot. He's got Calvin Ridley. Got DeAndre Hopkins. He's got Tony Pollard. He's got Tyjae Spears. He's got Chig Okonkwo. He's got whoever they're going to add in the draft. He's got a much better offensive line. He's going to have his shot. And if it doesn't work out, and if he's not that guy, at least we'll be able to know, you know what? It wasn't because we didn't give him everything that we could give him. It wasn't because we didn't give him every resource that we could possibly give. So let's go out and let's get another guy. It baffles me how people just act like Anthony Richardson is a proven commodity and Will Levis has no upside. It just, I don't understand. It baffles me that Bryce Young gets total benefit of the doubt, gets all the excuses in the world for him, and then Will Levis, it's like, oh, you know, you got put in halfway through the year with terrible protection and one good receiver and bad play calling, and we don't understand why you didn't do better. You know, just come on. Come on. Like, I need your stance to be rooted in reality. You have questions about him, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't critique him. I'm not saying you can't have questions. But to just write him off while you know, praise these other guys who have, like Anthony Richardson, who's played in 2 games, and act like that's a proven commodity right there. Give me a break, man. Give me a break. Anyway, that's just something I had to share. Also, one last thing. Do you know how many posts I've seen on Twitter that were like, hey, if the Titans want to win now, why'd they fire Vrabel? They're going to make all these moves to make the team better. Why didn't they just keep Vrabel along? They want to win. I can't even justify it with a response. Like, I can't even justify it with a response. I don't even know what to say to you people. Maybe Vrabel will do a good job wherever he's coaching, head coaching this year. Oh, wait. The greatest head coach in the world didn't find a job. I've said it before. I like Vrabel, but I'm never going to let the media and all these people who swore the Titans were idiots for letting him go, I'm never going to let them live it down. Dylan says, any other team that would have made these moves like we have the offseason would be hanging up a banner. Yeah, I said that about the Colts the other night. The Colts are, you know, making all these jokes or whatever, but it's like, if they had had an offseason, like if they had gone into this offseason and signed Calvin Ridley, signed L'Jarius Sneed, signed Chido Awuzie, signed Lloyd Cushenberry, signed Tony Pollard, like made all these moves, if they had done all of that, they would be literally hanging a banner, because the Colts will hang a banner for taking a dump after eating too much Taco Bell, right? But they would be hanging a banner. It was like, we signed Calvin Ridley. Irsay would be on Twitter saying God only knows what. And like they would be going nuts about it. But isn't it convenient that when a rival does it, when the Titans do it, then it's like, y'all are overpaying. This guy's washed. He's not that good. He has an injury history. Our quarterback's played in 2 games, but we know he's good. Anyway, that's it for me today. Two Tone Talk by God Pod. We are heading toward the draft, ladies and gentlemen. The draft. I'm going to be going live for the draft, by the way. I'm going to be live streaming during the draft, so make plans to come hang out. God bless everybody. Tighten up. Go subscribe to the page. Go follow me on Twitter at @2tone_podcast. Have a good Monday, everybody. Bye.
Just feel free. Feels like the world is picking on ya. Feels like it's picking on me. But trying to please everybody, that ain't no way to be. So many people try to get ya.